we are in an informal meeting over lunch, which has a couple of effects. One is that we do have a hybrid setting, and actually I'm welcoming also participants who have joined us online. The other is that it's an informal event, which means also the seating is very free, so those who want to move further up can do so. But of course, we have the technology here with very able assistance of conference services that will lead us also through this hybrid meeting today. So as I said, it's a pleasure to open this meeting. My name is Felix Kirchmeier. I'm working at the Geneva Human Rights Platform and will moderate this session today. The side event is brought to you in collaboration between the Human Rights Platform and the Swiss Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I thank in particular the Permanent Mission, but also the Department on International Public Law of the Federal Department of Foreign Affairs for the support and collaboration in this event. And of course, also all the speakers and partners here. And I will introduce the speakers, even though they don't need introduction in just a minute, but would like to first of all hand the floor for the opening remarks to His Excellence Julien Thöny, Deputy Permanent Representative of Switzerland to the UN in Geneva, and to Professor Olivier de Frouville, Chairperson of the Committee on Enforced Disappearances and Chairperson of the Chairperson meeting. So first of all, Ambassador Thöny, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to all of you, Excellencies, dear participants, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I thank you very much for inviting me to this side event at this very much crucial moment to reflect together on the current state and future of our treaty body system. Switzerland greatly appreciates this opportunity to make its contribution in this respect. And I thank you, Mr. Executive Director, and also the members of the panel to have organized this specific meeting. The treaty body system is a pillar of the international human rights architecture. It is an expression of the universality of human rights and offers a unique mechanism for review, dialogue, and accountability. However, this system is currently under considerable pressure. These are challenging times. We are currently facing a financial, political, and structural triple crisis. This crisis affects not only the human rights system and the United Nations, but also the multilateral system as a whole. It forces us to defend the achievements of recent years and more than ever to develop concrete solutions. Over time, Switzerland has strategically contributed to making Geneva the city for developing global solutions to global challenges, in particular in the area of human rights. This was made possible by actively promoting the creation of a unique ecosystem of international organizations, NGOs, academia, and public-private partners, while facilitating the quasi-universal permanent representation of UN member states in one single place. Just to remind that we have 184 permanent representations here in Geneva, so the quasi-universality. This is why we are very much concerned by some proposals of structural cuts and of delocalization formulated by some organizations in the wake of the UN80 initiative. Also, we have long been advocating for serious and long-term strategic efforts for better efficiency of the UN system. These proposals, if they were to be applied in haste, would have significant impact regarding the standing of human rights in Geneva and could lead to a lasting weakening of the concerned institutions. So we must really think along a strategy. As for the treaty body system itself, the triple crisis not only threatens the committee's ability to work, it also threatens to wipe out central advances that have been jointly developed for more than a decade. One of the key reform measures for the treaty body system is the implementation of a predictable 8-year cycle for state reviews. Such a measure was conceived as part of the strengthening process and represents a solution for greater predictability and equal treatment. It has been decided, but not yet implemented. The current financial uncertainty seriously calls into question its realization. Other measures, such as the harmonization of working methods and the introduction of the new intercommittee advisory mechanism, require not only political will, but also resources to produce their effects. Unfortunately, the latest General Assembly resolution 79/165 failed to allocate additional resources. At the same time, drastic cuts in voluntary contributions have already led to shortened or even cancelled meetings, with serious consequences for reporting cycles and individual complaints. Ladies and gentlemen, in this difficult situation, we need two things: clarity in analysis and pragmatism in action. Switzerland supports targeted transitional measures to maintain the functioning and accountability of the treaty body system at a minimum level. These include digital solutions, hybrid forms of working, clustering of meetings, or regionalized follow-up processes. Measures that we have already tried out during the pandemic and which must now be brought back to the table. At the same time, we should seriously consider structural solution. One such option could be a new General Assembly resolution, for example, to adapt Resolution 68/268 to the current realities. Switzerland is open to discussing such a possibility with its partners. Such reform steps should be possible without opening up the content of the human rights conventions. We are convinced that a targeted, progressive, and inclusive approach can achieve substantial improvement even in a difficult context. The spirit of cooperation, as demonstrated at the informal conference in December 2024, remains central in this context. Let's think together today about the short-term measures we need to take now and the structural orientation we want to adopt to stabilize the treaty body system in the long term. Switzerland will continue to commit itself with energy to a strong, effective, and credible human rights system, and it will continue to do its utmost to reinforce Geneva as a stronghold of multilateralism, notably for the sake of international human rights protection. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Thank you for this very substantive opening that brings us also back to mind all the proposals that were made and actually the discussions also. We had also joint events around the last chairperson meeting in New York, so it's great to hear that follow-up and follow-through by Switzerland. And also your mention on the universality, because as I'm just coming from our house over there at Villa-Moigné, where we have a training ongoing for delegates for from small island states and LDCs in advance of the Human Rights Council session next week, exactly this universality is what keeps the debates in Geneva so meaningful. And actually, so of course, we hope this will be continuing. I would like to give the floor now to Olivier de Fruvier for your opening remarks. Olivier, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Felix. First, I would like to thank very much Switzerland through you, Mr. Ambassador, for all the support you've given all along those years, all along this process of so-called strengthening process, but even before. And when I'm speaking of support, I'm not speaking only of financial support, which of course is important at this time, but I'm also and mostly speaking also of substantive support, in the sense that of the inputs that you are giving to the debate. And it's not always the case. There has been a lot of discussions in the last 10 years after the adoption of Resolution 2014. And a lot of ideas have been put on the table. Switzerland has always been very present in those debates and giving very substantive inputs, ideas, and just what you've just articulated, a vision for the future. So really looking forward and not just trying to do the little management things. It's really important for us, and sometimes we are lacking such a vision. And I think it's probably what we lacked at the last in the last sequence of the process. You mentioned the resolution which has been adopted in December by General Assembly, which is a kind of let's say a very formal resolution, just reconducting 68 to 68, calling for more use of new technology, which we of course agree, but not giving really solutions and not giving any vision for the future of the treaty bodies system. And of course, when we speak about the treaty bodies, we're not speaking about procedures, we're not speaking about committees, we're speaking about human rights and protection of human rights throughout the world. This is the United Nations, this is universal organizations, it's unique. We don't have another one. There's no plan B. If we don't have this system, we have no other system. Of course, we have the regional systems, but they don't extend everywhere and they don't have the same features. Here we really have the possibility of implementing a universal and constructing, because this is a continuous construction, constructing and implementing a universal vision and interpretation of human rights. And this is extremely precious. And of course, this is also precious for everybody's life, every day's life. And that's what we are fighting for. In fact, we're not fighting for procedures, we're not fighting for committees or ourselves. We're just fighting for a universal protection of human rights for everybody. We're fighting for inclusion of everybody, for everybody's participations in decisions, for non-discrimination. That's exactly why we are trying to achieve here. And now you talked about it, we're struck with this new crisis, which is the so-called liquidity crisis. And I like the presentation and the summary of the event that speaks of a triple crisis. It's a crisis of budget, it's a crisis of cash flow, but it's also a crisis of politics. And the last crisis, in fact, leads the other. It's above all a crisis of politics. It's of course a crisis of politics of one member states that withdraw from multilateral organizations and from multilateralism and from human rights programs. It's broader than that, of course, a crisis also in the belief and the commitment to international law and to the international rule of law. Now we're taking this crisis as treaty body chairs and as treaty bodies very seriously. We recognize the seriousness of the situation. I think this is the first step. We don't underestimate what we are going through. We cannot underestimate because this has direct impact. Now currently we are at the stage, and this is evolving every day. We're getting bad news every day, basically. We are at the stage where all the pre-sessional working groups have been cancelled, the stage where all third sessions of committees that have a third sessions have been cancelled until the end of the year. We know that we'll have at least 45 reviews that will have to be cancelled as a consequence. We know that there are multiple individual communications that will have difficulties to adopt. Number of list of issues that we will have difficulties to adopt. We know that many interactions with civil society and other stakeholders will also be affected. So we take this very seriously, and what we're trying, and just to give you an insight of what we're trying to do to face this. First, we're trying to see what urgent measures we can take. This is an exceptional circumstances, and it calls for urgent measures. Urgent measures doesn't mean measures that are here to stay for the future. It's not creating a new normality. It's creating measures that are here to tackle the situations that are required by the circumstances that justify those measures. I'm saying this because we'll be very careful if we take measures that are exceptional, that it does not become something something normal for the future. But we're working on this, and we're working on this to try to preserve the integrity of the treaty, to try to preserve the commitment of states parties with their obligations, to try to preserve protection, actual protection for human rights that counts for everybody. We're doing damage control, and we'll be doing our best, and I think there is a strong consensus among the chairs to do that. The second thing we'll be trying to, we will do, and we'll adopt conclusions in that regard, is that we will continue to look forward. We'll continue with articulating a vision for the future, We've been turned down in our proposal to have an 8-year cycle of review of reports, but then we'll continue with the idea of predictability, because we think this is absolutely necessary to have predictability of reviews for everybody, for stakeholders, for states mostly. So we will propose a new version of predictability, which would not be so nice as the one that we could have, and that the one that we proposed. There might be very, very long delays between 2 reviews, but at least we will articulate something. And then finally, we really want to push as much as possible harmonization. I think we will be able to share a table that show how much we have harmonized already, of course, in the constraints of the treaties that have been drafted by states. But we have done a lot already, but there are still some room for improvement, and we recognize this, but we are ready to take very, very important steps in that direction. And we really look forward, of course, for states to support us politically, financially, and also something which is absolutely central, but I'm sure my other colleagues will speak about it, is harnessing the potential of technologies in our work. This system is a legacy of the 20th century. The reporting system is something that was invented by the ILO after the First World War. The administrative control, as it was called. So we must have a vision of how these procedures and these institutions project themselves in the 21st century, and that includes that needs to include the potential of new technologies. But for that, we of course need some support. But with technology, we can certainly change a lot. And have much more impact, improve our complementarity, the complementarity of UN mechanisms, but not only UN mechanisms, also regional mechanisms, and do a lot. So thank you very much. Thank you again for organizing this.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Olivier, for those forward-looking opening remarks. And that brings us now to our panel discussion, and I am excited to have actually with us a great group of speakers for this panel discussion. We plan to have a 5-minute intervention by each of you, actually, so that we then can open the floor for questions and discussions. And I also want to announce already for the colleagues who are with us online, please do send your questions in the chat. My colleague Domenico Zipoli is actually also there to follow up on this and look for your questions. And you'll also have the possibility to take the floor online then in the discussion. So just let us know if you want to speak. So as we heard, actually, the UN Human Rights Treaty Body Systems is at crossroads. And when discussions over the last decade focused on efforts to enhance the effectiveness and efficiency of the work in order to strengthen the universality of human rights, the current debates actually circle around the question of what part of status quo can be maintained in times of a triple crisis of budget, cash flow, and politics. And as you said, Olivier, also, it's the politics and obviously the cash flow crisis and the budget crisis. If we look at it in the framing of the UN, we still talk about a very small budget for human rights and a big budget and a growing one for defense. So it's, of course, a question of political priorities more than of availability of money as such. So today we would want to discuss the implications of those saving measures, as you said, on the functioning and of the treaty bodies, and also on their potential to maintain universality via a predictable schedule of reviews. We want to offer more insights actually on how measures that are discussed in the frame of a decade of treaty body strengthening could maybe also help today to confront the current crisis and explore modalities which could be acceptable as urgency measures. So again, echoing what you said, Olivier, to maintain a minimum level of accountability and universality in the system. Of course, as always, I want to invite also all the speakers. And again, I note here that we're in an informal setting, so we are well aware that while you're chairs of treaty bodies, you are speaking in your individual capacities. same for the ambassadors if they so wish, to really look forward and see what each stakeholder group can really contribute to this current moment in maintaining and ideally then in the long terms, again, strengthening the treaty body system. So thinking outside the box sometimes is nice, but sometimes is also a little bit futile, but stretching the box definitely is something we should be thinking about, how to develop that system that we want to maintain here in practice. So I'm turning, as it's the order in the program, first to you, Laura. So Laura Maria Kretschinian-Tatu, Chairperson of the Committee on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. I would like to ask you if you can share, well, the impact that you see right now, but also the maybe best practices or positive examples that you had in your committee. And I'm thinking, of course, of things like back-to-back reviews with the human rights committees, but also the current challenges that I think you're facing in your committee to continue offering the simplified reporting procedure and the list of issues prior to reporting with the background that we're having. Any other issues you'd like to raise? So Laura, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Felix, for this kind introduction and also for inviting me to be a part of this exchange. And also I would like to thank the organizers for convening this event, which I think it's really timely and also really important. And it's good that we started to speak in a very frank and direct manner and acknowledging the fact that we don't really have a liquidity crisis, but it is more than that. And I think this is really important as a starting point when we want to take effective measures, because if we don't really acknowledge the situation, then the measures that we are taking are not really responding to the needs. And I mean, I'm just sometimes I do this when I confront myself with difficult issues, and I check whether this certain issue can be solved with money. And if it can be solved with money, then it's an expense, not a problem. Yes, and in this case, I really think that it's good that we actually realize this. So of course, we are living complex and difficult times, and I'm totally in agreement with the previous speakers on this. There are times in which multilateralism and also global governance in general and human rights in particular are under threat, and there is also a value crisis in this all this picture. So of course we need to navigate these complex times, and preferably we would like to keep the same boat that we were used to navigate. But on the other hand, we will also need a good amount of resilience and also, let's say, flexibility to adapt to the challenges. So I was asked to speak about the potential of the back-to-back reviews by CEST and the Human Rights Committees, and also the challenges of a probably fixed coordinated calendar, but also the challenges that the CEST is confronted in terms of his methods of work. And I'm glad that I can share with you my personal opinion and not the opinion of the committee, because we have not discussed this in our committee. So it's something that we will be probably discussing in our September session. So as a matter of principle, I think that the issue of a back-to-back review by CEST and the Human Rights Committee is something that we should aim at. And it's also a question of, in terms of practical terms, but also in terms of value. So I think that the message that we will transmit with this kind of approach is really important in terms of equality, universality of all human rights. But we need to be aware of the fact that these two committees at this point in time do not stand at the same level. So when I'm speaking about this, I'm thinking about the Human Rights Committee, which is now a model in the implementation of the simplified reporting procedure. And I'm thinking about CEST, which has agreed to implement the simplified reporting procedure, but it has not implemented it. Yeah, so we stand on different levels, and I think that one maybe in terms of practical issues, we will need probably to think how these two can be put together in order to address them. So we are one committee which is not having a third session. Yeah, so in terms of resources, our predictable calendar looks a 14 years calendar, I guess. So it's not really an 8-year predictable calendar, but it is 14 years predictable calendar within the current resources. And I think this is important to be taken into account when thinking about this. Then the simple fact that one of the committee is uses the simplified reporting procedure as a default procedure, and the other one is not able to implement it, it might create some difficulties in terms of maybe arranging this calendar, because these two procedures have a different logic and they start with a different actor. Yeah, so that would also need to be tackled, but I think it's important to think about it, at least. And in terms of, because I want to be also positive on this, so CEST has experienced the back-to-back review with the Human Rights Committee, as far as I remember, for the first time in 2019, 2020, when we consider Estonia, if I remember correctly, and also Finland in this way, but it was a very, it was left much more at the hands of the country rapporteurs and the respective human rights officers in the Secretariat. So it was a coordination between the four main actors of this exchange, and it went well, yeah, because it avoided, we avoided overlapping issues, but it was also really important, yeah, in terms of convincing the members. And then in 2000, more recently, so in 2023, I guess, in respect of Palestine, we used this back-to-back review with the Human Rights Committee, in the sense that the same human rights officer was assigned for doing the work for both concluding observation. And as far as I understood from my colleagues, that was a very good, experience, because it allowed us to really be focused and agree on things that were common to both committees. So maybe just to conclude, because I guess my 5 minutes are elapsed. So in principle, I guess it's good that we think about this in terms of message and symbolic message, but also we will need then to look very attentively of the practicalities of the implementation of this back-to-back review. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this forward-looking, but also the reality check of where we are and where actually things that you personally say you would like to see the committee offer more are actually restricted also by the means the committee has. But also I think your point on the role of the Secretariat, I'm sure we'll come back to that, is a very important one. Now I'd like to turn to our second speaker, to Nakhla Haidar, Chairperson of the Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women. And Nakhla, your committee has been very active also in informal ways of ensuring follow-up and implementation to the recommendations. And we ourselves in the Human Rights Platform have piloted, along with other partners, the Commonwealth, the Pacific Community, a lot of cross-committee implementation, follow-up reviews actually in regions, in countries, where we saw also the value of this engagement of treaty body members in individual capacity, intersessionally engaging with the authorities, with the NGOs, and actually making good leeway for the implementation of recommendations. But then your committee has taken that much further, and so I'd like to invite you to reflect on this and what it could mean also in times where there is the pressure, of course, especially on the official part of the sessions and the functioning of the committees.
Thank you very much, Felix. And I want also, of course, to thank Switzerland in the person of the ambassador for their continuous support to improve the work both in the humanitarian and the human rights sphere in Geneva. And I have to recall here that I have already witnessed the tension because of the divide between New York and Geneva at the time of humanitarian affairs, when most of the responsibility were also delegated to New York, as I was a former staff member. And I hope that we can do collectively more to preserve the human rights component, which is so important also for Geneva, but also beyond Geneva, from Geneva to the world. What I'd like to say here, building on what Felix just said, is that those informal attempts that the Geneva Academy facilitated to ensure that we take follow-up more closely to the field, that we interact with stakeholders, were very, very useful. And in addition, we had another example of another treaty body who was able to organize a session in Samoa, and that was CRC. And all the feedback from there prompted us to think that maybe it's about time that for those small island states for whom it's so difficult to travel all the way to Geneva, for whom it's so expensive for CSO to be present, maybe we should be considering going to the region. And we were very lucky because this coincided with the Pacific Island Forum women leaders who held a meeting in Fiji in 2023 and tabled a paper proposing a Pacific session of the Committee on Elimination of Discrimination Against Women. And this paper was unanimously endorsed and escalated to the Pacific Island Forum leaders, where it was also supported. So we were able, based on that, to work very closely with the South Pacific Community Secretariat and organize in Fiji from 7 to 11 April with a huge support of the regional office of OHCHR, which is also based in Fiji, and the regional office of UN Women. We have organized that special event, which we could not call a regular session because we are bound by the fact that regular session only happens in Geneva, at least until now, but we called it capacity building session and technical cooperation. And we had more than 1,000 participants engaged in person and online, representing government, civil society organization, and Pacific community. And it comprised two parts. The event was 5 days. The first part on over 2 days was a regional technical and capacity development program involving 15 Pacific governments at very high level of prime minister in some instances, and civil society organization from across the Pacific, but also academics, because it was done also in conjunction with the University of the South Pacific. And we have been able to see how cross-fertilization between CSO from different countries and the CEDAW Committee on Priority Gender Equality Issues has really generated a lot of interest. And we have managed in the 3 remaining days to organize 3 dialogues, constructive dialogues with 3 countries who were really very supportive because they submitted their reports on time. That is Fiji, Solomon Island, and Tuvalu. The objective of the session were to accelerate the progress towards gender equality. Many of these countries had not been able to come back to Geneva for more than 8 or sometimes 9 years, 10 years, and they were eager to continue to promote the agenda of gender equality, but they lost touch somehow with the process in Geneva. And then we had to also, in addition to accelerating the progress, we wanted to capture also evidence on the nature and value of engagement of UN treaty body session at regional level. We were not in April so much aware of the acuity of the crisis that we are facing, but we were already starting to think outside the box. How can we maintain the visibility and the impact of our work if we were to lose some of the resources, and we have lost a lot of the resources, obviously, as was said earlier. So what happened also during this session that was of great interest is that there were many what they call in the region talanoa, which are conversation between all stakeholders on themes like culture, faith, and religion and human rights, on children and youth role, on climate change, on political participation, on women with disability, and we had a special sub-regional consultation on our upcoming GR on gender stereotype. All what I can say here is that this was extremely, extremely beneficial for us because it has showed us that even our simplified reporting procedure should be simplified. We have noted that we go about countries like Tuvalu, 14,000 inhabitants, with existential threat from climate change, and we still send them 25 questions. We thought this was really unhuman, and we triggered the thinking, how can we simplify the simplified reporting procedure? And how can we help countries, once the COPs are adopted, understand and develop implementation of the recommendation, especially for those who do not have a national NMRIF for follow-up and reporting. So I think that it is a very good experience that shows us that there may be a potential for future similar initiatives for other sub-regions in the world. And I encourage colleagues also to look at the final report that we will be publishing very soon with OHCHR, and to partner with similar organization when it is possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this great example, actually, of outreach and capacity building in the region here, which is so complementary to the official sessions here in Geneva. And I think also it's interesting to see how it's beneficial, of course, for the stakeholders in the region, but also for the committee to further develop its thinking on simplification, as you mentioned, or all the working methods. With this, I would like to turn to our next speaker, to Maria Luisa Romero, Chairperson of the Subcommittee on the Prevention of Torture. Your committee is the one that in all the discussions, maybe a little bit along with the Committee on Enforced Disappearances, said yes on all the harmonization, and of course also the SPT, because it's such a different way of working. But now the impact of the saving measures, of course, are also different to your committee. And I'd like to ask you to share some of your insights actually of the impacts, but also the thoughts again, outside the box, as you said again, Nakhla, of how to engage, how your committee can actually maintain also the level of accountability needed. So over to you, please.
Thank you very much, Felix, and thank you to Switzerland and to the Geneva Human Rights Platform for this very timely discussion. And it's an honor to be able to contribute on behalf of the SPT's views and experience on this. So I will start with the specific question on how the SPT is distinct and the impact that means. Of course, operating within the broader UN human rights framework and the treaty body specifically, the SPT is distinct for its preventive mandate, which is aimed at preventing torture and ill treatment around the world. This mandate includes direct in-field visits to places of deprivation of liberty, combined with session work that enables planning and follow-up of those visits, engagement with national preventive mechanisms, and hands-on technical assistance to state parties. While the SPT gradually has increased its visits since its first ones in 2007, at one point reaching 10 visits per year, our preventive mandate was never matched with adequate staffing or resources. Persistent shortfalls in core support have since, at that time when there were 10 visits per year, reduced that number to now 8 annually, even as states parties have grown to 94 currently. In 2019, for the first time, we had to postpone 2 announced visits due to the lack of funding. Of course, the current crisis is completely unprecedented. At this point of the year 2025, no visits have occurred, with 4 planned missions to Serbia, Burundi, Mozambique, and Mexico postponed. While we are very relieved and happy to be able to resume our visiting work with 2 missions scheduled for later this month, this step forward does not erase the impact of the long pause that we have had, which is the longest pause in our history. When visits don't take place, they create critical gaps in the international system's ability to prevent torture. SPT visits involve private interviews, on-site monitoring of conditions, and direct engagement with national authorities, NPMs, civil society, and other stakeholders. In 2024 alone, just to give an example, the SPT interviewed more than 3,800 people in its visits, primarily persons deprived of liberty, but also law enforcement and prison personnel and medical staff. We visited over 170 places of deprivation of liberty, including not only prisons and police stations, but also psychiatric institutions, migration centers, rehabilitation facilities, and social care homes. Each SPT visit is a critical opportunity to detect early warning signs, address structural risks, and ensure that the voices of those in detention are heard. With each postponed visit, the international community's commitment to prevention weakens. After the postponement of these 4 visits, the SPT took an internal, very difficult but proactive step, proposing to OHCHR in April to merge its June and November sessions to reallocate the limited resources for the 2 visits this month. And that's what has made these 2 visits possible. Since then, as you know, the UN has confirmed that no treaty body will hold a 3rd session in 2025. So this means that our planned 2-week session in November has been reduced to just 1 week. And I do want to highlight what this means for the SPT. Although the core mandate that we have is visiting, the SPT's visits and sessions are closely linked in this preventive mandate. Sessions go beyond reviewing visit reports. They are essential for planning, for coordinating, and for following up on visits, for engaging with state parties, and for advising states and NPMs, and also for fostering international cooperation. I'll speak about that more in a second. So both visits and sessions are absolutely critical to our mandate. For this reason, we have insisted that funding should reflect this connection, meaning that each week of our sessions, and we have 4 in 1 year, should be matched with the resources for 2 country visits. These interdependent activities must be planned and funded together. Without this balance, OPCAT cannot function as intended. Also, in response to these challenges, and also moving to the second question, Felix, in the SPT, we have adopted some pragmatic measures in addition to the ones I mentioned about our June session in order to maximize impact with limited resources. One is that for next year, for 2026, we have restructured our calendar, and this has now been confirmed, to hold 2 2-week sessions instead of 3 shorter ones, reducing costs and scheduling our first session for May, which allows us to start the year with country visits. Also, supporting NPMs remain, of course, a huge substantive priority for us, always, but especially now. They are the front line of prevention. The SPT can only visit 8 countries in 1 year, whereas an NPM can visit perhaps 100 places of deprivation of liberty in 1 year in their country. So this ongoing presence and monitoring ensures that persons deprived of liberty are not unheard, and this is very essential. We maintain regular dialogue with NPMs through online meetings, webinars, and virtual consultations to help reinforce these local preventive systems. We're also seeking to broaden engagement with state, civil society, and other relevant actors via online consultations, but I do need to mention here that current UN restrictions on interpretation really limit accessibility, and we would really like to see a policy shift in this sense so that we could make these interactions far more inclusive and effective. Cooperation, which is one of our mandates, is more urgent than ever. With limited resources, we're seeking to deepen collaboration with regional, international, mainly the UN, and also national partners, sharing our mission and ensuring complementarity and collaboration, especially with the regional systems. Finally, a focus on the digital infrastructure could really enhance our engagement through the hybrid formats that I mentioned, but also through facilitating information sharing and coordination across the UN system. A very basic example is the country briefs that we need to develop for the SPT. I believe that we could have better coordination with perhaps other treaty bodies, but especially with special procedures, for example. So while our visits remain irreplaceable, smarter digital tools could perhaps make our work more effective, inclusive, and connected. To close, I would just like to reiterate that the SPT remains completely committed to our preventive mandate, and I look forward to this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this insight into the SPT's work. And actually, of course, it's very frightening to hear about 10 visits down to 2 to 4 now, what all of that means. But I think it's also great to hear about the approach of your committee, as you said, like reducing travel costs for the sessions here, but then also looking into more online and hybrid modalities. And I think, again, that's just to underline your call also to states to see how this can be more enhanced when the use of technology is so promising. It's also in a number of resolutions underlined, invited whatsoever, but then no follow-up is done. And that leads me very nicely to our next speaker, actually, Ambassador Mayra McDonnell-Alvarez, Permanent Representative of Bolivia to the UN here in Geneva. Thank you very much for joining us. Because actually Bolivia also has had experiences in hybrid settings, and I think as a smaller state, also not that close to Geneva, you also had mentioned how such a hybrid setting has enabled so much more of a meaningful dialogue. I'd like to hear from you from the perspective of a member state, also what could be done now in view of this crisis and the urgency measures needed. So the floor is yours, Ambassador.
Thank you so much, Felix. And it's an honor for me being here, and thank you for the invitation and the organizations to the Geneva, the Human Rights Geneva Rights Platform, and also to the Swiss mission. I think it's a very important and needed conversation. Sometimes for small delegations that we are consumed by the work of the Human Rights Council. That's a very broad and very big agenda, but it is important for us to be engaged and to be committed and informed what this happened with the treaty bodies. Well, yes, I think as previous speakers said, we are living in a difficult moment. This budget constraints and the political situation, the threat to multilateralism, it's felt, and we are affected by that. And I think it's important for us to recommit with the universal system of human rights protections, also to reinforce cooperation, and also to speak about this difficulty of depending of the contributions of one country. I think it's a difficult conversation, but also gives us opportunity to not just for the human rights issues, but also in the Geneva, we've seen that the whole organizations are suffering on this, and it's important to see how can we better be prepared, how can better react, and use this opportunity to go back to the core mandates and to better implement in a very effective way our mandates. As Felix said, yes, in our case of Bolivia, we are a small delegation here in Geneva, but also the team of human rights back in my country. It's not that small, but it's very difficult for them to come here to Geneva and to engage as we wanted to with the treaty bodies. Not just with the time cost, and also for during the pandemic treaties, more of our dialogues with the treaty bodies were in the agenda. These last 3 years, we defended almost 6 of our reports to the treaty bodies. It was a lot of information, a lot of commitment, and a lot of work for my country. And one of the things that helped us was the hybrid modality. This I want to underline because it just helps us not for the participation in equal conditions, that it's very important for my country. The use of technology allows us also in the preparations for each dialogue to engage with institutions in my country that has to give us information to build the reports that we are going to present to the treaty bodies. That process is complex, and we managed here from Geneva to be engaged also with the team in Bolivia, but the whole institutions that has to contribute to the reports has to be engaged. So for that, the comprehensive dialogues that we have with the treaty bodies and the participation in the hybrid modality give the opportunity to the institutions to know how this works. So that's very important, and it helps us organize all the dialogues. The first one that we had in 2021 during the pandemic moment was with the Committee on Human Rights. That was very difficult to build. But as I said, the hybrid modalities help us not just because during the dialogue, but also with the preparation with the secretariat and the involvement of the country was very important. That and as I said, it helps us with the institutions that has to contribute. That's very important. That was a very important part for us. But also wanted to highlight the use of technology to avoid for the work now, avoid overlapping repetitions during preparation of dialogues. It's that at some point, some issues are very repetitive and sometimes even politically motivated. And that's a very particular issue that we see in many dialogues. I think it's important to avoid this and to also build trust with the country, because sometimes it's even not is our obligation. We know that the involvement with the treaty bodies is in a core place in our involvement with the human rights universe, and but this has to be very well put, and maybe I don't know with the list of teams, the teams that you shared us with could be compared, maybe more focused on the mandates of each treaty body, and to avoid this repetition. And it could also help us time and organizing our dialogues. As was mentioned before, a better coordination with the secretariat also is very needed, and also could help for the work and internal work for the treaty bodies. It's important for us to promote this constructive dialogue. We said it many times, the recognition of advances of the countries and more cooperation implementing the recommendations. And also here it's important to have this line of, for examples with the UPR. I think UPR is a very good and well accepted mechanism, and it reflects the capacity of the country that could be implemented in the countries. And it's a very broad exercise and gives us a good example of how the countries is doing and how can we are better at working on some issues. The UPR, to take into consideration, the UPR is also a very good tool for us. And again, for the use of technology, secure information sharing, digital platform managed by the Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights. It was an idea that we did, and we worked with Luxembourg, for example, when we were vice presidents of the Council in 2023. We proposed to have this tool for managing information, and to be promoted for the Office of the High Commissioner, but to have all the information in one platform, and do it more friendly user for countries, would also help us to be better organized for small delegations and back in country also to engage and to reinforce the teams that we have for this reporting periods and cycles. And also for us, it's important to have a better information and on the simplification and harmonization process of the method of work of the treaty bodies. Is at some point being so confused that when we try to engage my country to understand how each committee is being organized, it's been very complex, this exercise. So on that, the predictability, as we mentioned, is very important in this outreach and building capacity for countries to be engaged in this process is also, we want to recommend it. As I said, ensure the equal treatment in the states, more information and common methodology of the elaboration and consultation on general comments, guidelines, procedures. I think, and I understand that it is very complex to work in these budget constraints, but maybe these processes and the whole simplification that they're doing it's been important to be also engaged and more and to have the countries more information. The complementarity with regional organizations is also very important. In the case of Bolivia, we have a very well and a lot of work with our regional organizations, with Inter-American Commission of Human Rights. We have a lot of recommendations from them also, but that are repetitive with the recommendations that they have with the treaty body. So this whole process and the system that we have in my country, we are working on it, but it's also very, very complex. But we do have our system, and it would be very good to have this cooperation with the Secretariat to see how can we better and improve it. And Also, in the last point, I think it's important to always remind that this constraints, that this measure that we are living, it's not just responding at this moment, of course, but human rights pillar of the UN. It is a pillar of the UN, and it's been having these problems long before, and it's very important to repeat the importance of reinforce the human rights pillar of the United Nations. I think the allocation for budget on other pillars, of course, are important, but we do not have to leave behind human rights. It is important, and we have to be constantly reminded of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, and thank you for speaking about the positive also experiences of using online technologies. And again, that brings us back to the question of a political decision more than a budgetary decision. I think you also had mentioned, I think, or somebody lately has mentioned how the question about the hybrid settings for the UPR and the Human Rights Council was such a big debate, and it turned out that it's just a couple of $1,000 for a whole session. So I think we're very much in a political debate there more than in a budget debate, definitely. But that leads me very nicely to our last speaker here on the panel, Antti Kokiakivi, Director of the Treaties Branch, Human Rights Treaties Branch here at OHCHR. Because also what you mentioned, Ambassador, was the digital portal with all the information in one place. And of course, the office is currently working towards a digital shift. And I think so that's maybe also a positive note that we can bring into this meeting, because otherwise I think the office is the place where everything comes together, but you're also the place who is probably the messenger who has to bring the bad news about shortening of sessions. So I don't want to leave all that blame just on you here, but really have an outlook on what the progressive and forward-looking ways are, how the office can actually support that process. So over to you, please.
Thank you, Felix, and thanks through you to the Geneva Human Rights Platform and to Switzerland for hosting this important event and for always being there in support of treaty bodies and human rights work in general. That is critical to have friends like you as partners. Now, yes, unfortunately, it's been a series of bad news that we've been conveying to treaty body chairs and others over the past week and before that. So it is good to look a bit into the future and look at the ways in which we can modernize the way we work and how we can use this crisis that we are in to reflect on and introduce some new ideas and in particular in terms of updating tools that we have. And as Olivier said, the mandates and the procedures were developed and created long time ago, back in the 30s for ILO and even for treaty bodies. We're talking about the first ones that were introduced almost 60 years ago. So the reporting procedure and the review and all that, the mandates are there for a long time, and now we have to make sure that we implement them in a modern way and ensure that we interact with the world in a manner that is up to date. And of course, in today's circumstances, with all the constraints that we have, this is more critical than ever. Now, that is one reason why you've seen in the chair's vision, 1 out of 3 pillars was the digital shift. We've also had a very detailed option paper created by the office that had a number of ideas as to how the digital shift for treaty bodies and beyond could be implemented. We also have, as Felix mentioned, a resolution that clearly mentioned that as a goal and as a principle to be pursued, but only in general terms. And many of the ideas, or basically all of the detailed ideas, they did not make it to the last resolution of the General Assembly, and definitely there was no funding, as you all know, to implement those that needed additional resources. But there are nevertheless some good news and some good processes underway Now, as Ambassador Bolivia and others have mentioned, the remote and hybrid modality is one that has helped treaty bodies to implement their mandates even in critical times, including during the COVID, where thanks to the hybrid modalities, we were able to imperfectly, but still able to continue the treaty body work. And that was an achievement in itself. Unfortunately, that modality, as I think most, if not all here know, has been very much restricted since. We still have that possibility for dialogues with the states parties, which is excellent, but not a replacement for in-person interaction, I should highlight. But as a complement to that, that's an excellent thing that we still have it, thanks to a reference in Resolution 68-268, but we do not have that possibility for interaction with civil society organizations, with NHRIs, or with national preventive mechanisms. So that's a big gap in terms of the capacity. And we are trying as an office to create then informal opportunities to have those remote connections, which are so critical for many national NGOs and others. And of course, it's important also for states in beyond the state reviews, because there are opportunities that we miss because we do not have that hybrid modality. As an example, today we're meeting as chairs. The chairs are meeting here in the same room. We are able to have a hybrid meeting now from 1 to 3, and then it's impossible after that because we are in formal setting, and member states have not granted a mandate for hybrid meetings. I know it goes way beyond treaty bodies, but it is just one example how this particular more general problem is affecting treaty body work and its digital shift. There are a lot of baby steps we've taken recently. One thing, just a couple of months ago, we were able to finally introduce is UN addresses for treaty body members, which sounds like a minor step, but actually it is important in order for us to provide certain tools for treaty bodies to collaborate online and use certain platforms that require UN email address. But larger initiatives that involve interaction with the outside world, there are a number of them. Mention a couple. One I think you've heard about this is the Digital Transformation Initiative related to the petitions. Now, there we have introduced an online submission portal for complaints, which gives those who submit individual complaints step-by-step guidance and help them ensure that the submissions are complete and structured. And this also leads then to additional efficiency and more accurate intake and faster responses. This is still a work in progress. We made a lot of efforts and it is operational, but there are a lot of things that could be added to that, including a possibility to add additional documents, etc. And beyond the actual submission platform, the important additional initiatives are a document management system that would be linked to that, as well as a workflow system. So that's just one area where we have piloted something that has very concrete impact, and efficiency gains are significant, especially if we're able to expand it further. There are other tools that we've offered. One is particularly for member states in order for them to follow up, and that's something called the National Recommendation Tracking Database, which is not only about treaty bodies, but it's about mechanisms in general, and that helps national authorities to ensure that they know what has been recommended and what has been followed up across different ministries, etc. And I think that's one tool that has been very much appreciated by member states. We have more than 50 states willing to use it. We've launched it officially in more than 10 countries at the moment, and again, hope to expand it further. And I believe there's a lot of look at that rain. It's not funding raining down on us, but so we are looking at ways in which we could link that also to reporting, because one of the key concerns, as been mentioned for states, is there are multiple reporting obligations, and how to facilitate that, how to make that simplified, and how to make that more modern. And if we have that tracking database that already includes a lot of information that could be shared in a public platform, I think that should be facilitated. And I think that would also enhance the reporting compliance by states, which, by the way, is the basis on which much of the meeting time of treaty bodies is calculated. So that's one example. Advancing AI in that and other contexts is, of course, something else we're working on. Big question, of course, for all these initiatives is the sustainability and the funding, and that is definitely hindering the long-term sustainability and development of the human rights platforms, the NRTD, and of course also the petitions work. And we're looking at ways to secure that, but as yes, we have all heard, it is extremely challenging in the current circumstances. But we believe that investment at this stage would produce a lot of savings and efficiency gains in the longer run. So that's all I wanted to share at this stage, and happy to.
Thank you very much for this. And yes, the rain out there does not invite anybody to leave the room early. So let's use the 20 minutes that we have, and I'm throwing open the floor. So please just raise your hand if you'd like to speak, and please introduce yourself when speaking, and keep it also brief so we can come back to a round of reactions also from the podium. Again, I'm also inviting colleagues online to take the floor themselves. I see there are some questions that have been posted in the chat, but you'll have the possibility to speak also directly and take the floor. So I'm looking here around in the room if I see any. Yes, so Katja from Finland, please.
Thank you, and thank you so much for organizing this important side event, and thanks to all the speakers for sharing the valuable insights. I think it's a good opportunity for us to exchange views and experiences. I was also asked by the organizers to say a few words on our experience with the coordinated back-to-back review process that we had with the Committee on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights and the Human Rights Committee. As you know, we were, of course, one of the first state parties which received the list of issues prior to reporting, coordinated by the two committees in April 2019. And these lists really played the benefits of coordination. They covered many topical human rights issues, but avoided the unnecessary repetition. And this coordinated review also allowed for a very holistic assessment of Finland's human rights performance. I just wanted to stress a few points with our experience. To begin with, the coordinated list of issues prior to reporting enabled us to better prepare our also answers, ensuring coherence and reducing the duplication and really strengthening the inter-ministerial collaboration. Our reports were reviewed back-to-back in 2021, and this piloting was also very positive for us, as this supported a deeper dialogue with both committees and really facilitated a fuller picture of our human rights implementation. And it also, I think, encouraged our government to reflect systematically on the cross-cutting human rights issues. And I think also regarding the civil society engagement, we feel that civil society could engage in a more coordinated and effective manner, aligning their inputs across both governance and maximizing their impact. We do also recognize the potential of the back-to-back reviews to reduce logistical burdens and costs, particularly if the committee's sessions were held consecutively in Geneva. In Finland's case, the reviews took place online due to the pandemic, but I think the model really demonstrated how aligning the review schedules can support the continuity and effective participation. One of the key advantages that we had was that the concluding observations of both the committees were basically received at the same time. This facilitated more coordinated and strategic implementation at the national level, as cross-cutting recommendations could be addressed in a unified and streamlined way. So this meant really that we had a greater internal coherence in follow-up planning across ministries, more effective resource allocation, avoiding duplication in the implementation, and also simplified sort of monitoring and reporting as cross-cutting recommendations could be tracked together. So overall, receiving the aligned recommendations in a single review cycle, in our view, really enhances the accountability, improves the follow-up mechanisms, and strengthens the integration of human rights obligations into national policy frameworks. We would welcome the opportunity to undergo a coordinated review again, and even to submit a single unified report on the implementation of both covenants. We do regret that the CEST has discontinued the simplified reporting procedure because it has proven really effective and valuable for states, parties, and stakeholders. And also maybe just to conclude, we believe that our experience really showed how coordinated and streamlined review processes can enhance the efficiency, coherence, and also the quality of the treaty body engagement. And I think it also really allows and offers us a positive example for treaty body strengthening and for encouraging other states to engage in a more integrated way. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this. And I'll go back and forth with online speakers. And in the room, I'll ask you all to keep it also rather short that we can hear everybody. And I have Virginia Brash-Gomez also online. So I hope it works. And I'll give you the floor, Virginia.
Thank you, Felix. I hope it works too. Thank you very much for all the presentations.
Use your headphones.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you very much to everyone for the presentations. It's a pleasure to see you all. And it's also a pleasure to look at the room in which I was for so many years. I don't know if it's the same or if the same room, but it looks pretty much the same room. And it brings back very warm memories. Thanks for all the presentations. My question actually follows up on what our colleague from Finland just said. I remember that when we started the back-to-back experience, it was part of a longer process that we thought that could be a first step towards a single report on civil and political rights and around social cultural rights. And the clustering in the back-to-back reports could be a first step. I have not heard any reference to this single report today. And I'm just wondering if it's still in the making or if it has been given up in the wider scheme of things, but it doesn't seem like it's feasible anymore. It did seem at the time, before I left in 2018, it did seem like something to work towards and that it could even strengthen the acceptance of member states. It could help them, encourage them. But that's something that I would like to listen to you too. And my second question is on now it's more than ever important to strengthen implementation. So I was wondering, what are the treaty bodies doing to encourage the establishment of NMIRFs if that's a part of the regular dialogue now? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Virginia, on those comments. A question on the combined reports and the question also on the NMIRFs, the national mechanisms on reporting, follow-up, and implementation. I see here in the room, yes, United Kingdom and a speaker from NGOs, yes, CCPR Center. So first UK, then CCPR Center, please.
Thank you very much. And first of all, thank you to Switzerland and to the Geneva Human Rights Platform for organizing this event and bringing us together. And I think it's also very valuable to be able to be here in the same room with all the chairs, since unfortunately we will not be able to attend the meeting tomorrow, which was moved for state parties. So it's appreciated to all be here together. And so we'd like to echo, first of all, the strong support for all the efforts that are being made to ensure the harmonization of working methods. I think for the UK, that's an absolute priority and something that we do wish to support with our political capital. But of course, this is in the hands of the different treaty bodies. And the UK had the experience now over the last 3 years of being reviewed 4 times. So at least we had a very good sort of snapshot of these different working methods across 4 different committees. And it does, as a colleague said, and obviously also the ambassador said of Bolivia, it does create confusions for colleagues back in capital. And of course, that's our job here in the missions in Geneva to explain the differences. But I think it is somehow, of course, each treaty has its specificities. But when we're talking specifically about working methods, it does seem like sometimes artificial differences. And so we do hope that is something that can be, most of all, accelerated, because we see that there has been, strong efforts linked to the use of the timers. I recognize the screen that was being used in our review with the CEST. So I think all these elements are really something which normally also do not have such resource implications. So we hope it's something that, as chairs, you can really try and convince your colleagues to accelerate this process. And then I also wanted to underline that for us, the value in particular of treaty bodies is the quality of the recommendations. And we do find it completely different in substance compared to the UPR, for example, which obviously covers so many different issues. And so the value of these recommendations must not be lost. And I think that's where, again, there's a very strong push and effort that should be done to avoid overlaps and to really try and maintain this quality and depth of the recommendations made in function of each treaty and what are the issues they cover, and not repeat necessarily elements which could be found in the UPR or which are just repeated across different treaty bodies. And then on the hybrid modalities, we've clearly heard, we understand that the OECHR does not have the mandate to facilitate remote participation. Rest assured, at least from the UK perspective, is something we are pushing hard. We pushed hard in Geneva, and now it's obviously in New York. And we have, many esteemed other delegations who are on our side trying to push this forward, because we do think that's an absolute priority and would be a solution, mostly for the pre-sessions. We think in the limited resources we have, that would be the most obvious way of using remote participation and hybrid modalities. And just on that last point, I think to react that, of course, there's the exceptional measures of the crisis, but there are the 21st century tools. And I think this is particularly relevant when we talk about civil society participation. There is nothing which is more of an equal denominator than this remote participation, because going to Geneva is obviously a very expensive endeavor. And ensuring that civil society can participate through these means is probably one of the best solutions as far as the pre-sessions and winding the engagement of treaty bodies. And to conclude, just linked to the working methods, we do understand that there are different ways for civil society and NHRIs to engage with the treaty bodies. I'm pretty sure that's also quite equally confusing for them. So it's another thing to encourage, is if this can be also harmonized, not just about states, but also civil society. Some do have whole mornings to discuss with the committees, and it's an excellent practice. Others have to all join in a 1-hour meeting and have, barely a few minutes to speak. So I think that's another element where there should be some coordination. And that would be it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And for those who are not linked online, I'm just referring to 2 comments that Phil Lynch of the International Service for Human Rights made. One actually asking also treaty bodies to consider a joint statement on the obligation of states under the Charter to pay their assessed contributions, as well as a reference to the Declaration on Human Rights Defenders. I think he made a statement also in the opening of the session on Monday, so just referring to that again. And I'm passing the floor to Andrea Meras, please, and then Milon Kotari, and then we'll bring it back to the panel just for a quick reaction.
Thank you very much. Thank you for organizing this meeting. I will be brief as the time is ending. Actually, the permanent mission of the UK already advocated very well for the participation of civil society, including civil society online participation. Our organization, the Center for Civil and Political Rights, supports NGO engagement with the Human Rights Committee, and also dissemination of the work of the committee and implementation of the concluding observations of the Human Rights Committee. Our chair is entering now. And I just wanted to give a specific data of last year to show how important is online participation of civil society. So for 2024, CCPR Center supported 496 human rights defenders to participate in the informal briefings organized by us outside the formal time of the sessions of the Human Rights Committee. And out of the 496 human rights defenders, 52% participated online. This means 258 human rights defenders participated online, thanks to the informal briefings that allow for hybrid participation. So this means that the online participation is really a big part of the participation of civil society. We thank the Secretariat of the Human Rights Committee that allow us to use the room that allows for hybrid participation. But I have to say that this requires time for the Human Rights Committee members because it's during lunchtime. This also is without interpretation, or sometimes we can provide a informal interpretation or online interpretation, etc. But it's not it's not with the full committee, it's not in the same conditions. So we are happy to continue to organize these briefings, these informal briefings that we think are very important. Also on behalf of the TVNet, there is a network that supports the work of other human rights, other treaty bodies. We're also happy to continue to support, and we thank for the support of the secretariats and the committee that attend our briefings. And we hope that the future of this will be that sometime it will be formal, like in the old times, let's say, NGOs. We were doing the webcast of the sessions, and finally we managed that the UN does the webcast. So we hope that for the online participation will be the same, and at some point I think we have to adapt to the new times, and hybrid participation will be the rule and accepted in all the sessions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and over to Milun Kotari, please.
Thanks very much, Felix. Good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to just point out to a model that may be useful for the treaty bodies to look at is the way in which Taiwan has been carrying out its reviews. So these take place in country. I'm a member of the International Committee on Economic, Social, Cultural Rights, and it's been a very interesting experience. It goes back to about 12 years. There have been 3 reviews. And what's really interesting about it is, of course, that we get to speak to a range of actors, but the concluding observations that we come up with are, in a sense, a hybrid, because we are there on the ground. We're able to visit sites, interview victims, and so on. So they're sort of between treaty body concluding observation and a special rapporteur recommendation. So I for some reason, this example has not been publicized or used very much. So I just wanted to share that. The second is that for many years now, there's been discussion on better collaboration between the treaty bodies and special rapporteurs, the Human Rights Council, the UPR. And I just wanted to ask the participants whether the budget cutbacks have had an impact on this collaboration, because I think it's very important given the importance of seeing the human rights system as a whole. And finally, I just wanted to say that in terms of, while we work on, as Olivia was mentioning, damage control and all that, it's really important to not lose the focus on the implementation of concluding observations. There's been quite a lot of progress in the UPR work on developing an implementation matrix. And so beyond the follow-up reviews, I wanted to ask if the treaty bodies are also working on how to actually make sure that the recommendations are implemented on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm aware that we should not encroach upon the official time of the session of the committees, but so if I still may just give you the opportunity, and I'm not going one by one, but just those who want to react to one of those questions to give a very quick reaction, so then we can close and leave the room, of course, again to the official session. I'm looking around me to see who might, yes, please, Laura.
because it would have a very short answer, and it answers to the question addressed by Virginia Brash Gomes in respect of the national mechanisms for implementation and follow-up. Due to a particular interest on this specific mechanism, CEST has introduced a standard recommendation for states parties to consider the possibility of having a national mechanism for implementation and follow-up. Thanks.
Just building on that point and answering Milon, I think that the issue of how do we monitor the implementation and how do we support states who have to disaggregate the COPs and see what is implementable. I just cited the recent example of the regional meeting we did in the Pacific, and these three countries have asked to be accompanied in better analyzing the COPs and preparing plan of action. And this is a proposal put to the Bureau of CEDAW, and I hope we can test it and then tell you how it works. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And Olivier, a last word to conclude our session here, our informal session.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. And thank you first and thank for everybody who came today to discuss with us. This is very precious. We also hope that we'll have the states parties, member states tomorrow during the dialogue we're holding with delayed this dialogue to leave some space for discussion with Guy Ryder. As I understand, we'll be briefing the member states on UNAT. We are very confident that there will be some improvements and not some regression with this UNAT discussion, especially on the human rights pillar. Just to respond to Milun, we have continuous interactions with special procedures. We just had an informal dialogue with Surya Deva upstairs because we couldn't have it in the room during our official sessions for the same stupid rules that are imposed on us. And we can, every time we have a dialogue, we can see the richness of the interactions the committees have with each special procedures and mandate holders. It's in fact a continuous process, not only once a year, but it's really continuous. For instance, the Committee on Enforced Disappearances, of course, is a natural partner to the Working Group on Enforced Disappearances. And then finally, not to end on a negative note, but sometimes hearing from state party and to be very frank is I have the impression sometimes to hear from clients who are not so satisfied with the product that they have bought. But the problem being sometimes that they don't realize that they haven't paid for the product. And so, I mean, we, and as pro bono experts, and people very committed to the cause of human rights, we of course are willing to move forward things as much as we can, and we will do. And I'm sure at the end and tomorrow when we will brief the States Party, I hope we can bring some very positive conclusions, but no, we really do the best as we can, but we really need more partners than clients, especially at this time. So we're really calling for partnership today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And with this, we are closing this meeting. I would like to thank also on behalf of the co-organizers, Switzerland and the Geneva Human Rights Platform, the speakers. I would like to thank you all for your time, and I wish you still a very good ongoing chairpersons meeting, and I hope that you'll come out of that with a good vision for urgency measures and really a way to maintain the accountability that's needed through this system in a universal way. So thank you very much for this.
Thank you.